The Associated Press just reported that whites are now a minority of those being born in America. European American babies are less than 5 out of every 10 babies born and are projected to be less than 1 out of 10 births in just a few decades. This differential in birth rates, coupled with massive illegal immigration, which is almost entirely non-European, and legal immigration, which is over 90% non-European, means that unless a political sea change occurs, white Americans will ultimately be not only a minority in the nation that our people founded, but a tiny minority, well on its way to political and physical obliteration by the end of this century. Think about it. A great people exampled by men such as George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Robert E. Lee, Teddy Roosevelt, Daniel Boone, Davy Crockett, Henry Ford, Thomas Edison, is now on the path to oblivion. White babies are now part of an endangered species in the country that their own ancestors created. The preamble of the Constitution of the United States clearly says its purpose, and even that purpose of the United States, to secure the blessings of liberty for ourselves and our posterity. But the posterity of Washington and all the founders of America is being wiped out in their own nation, and in a larger sense, from the very face of the earth. You know, it seems almost superfluous to recount the achievements of the European and American people. The genius of creating electricity, for instance, the power that drives your computer, and the electric lights that have lit the world's darkness were invented by our people. The computer devices that you're using right now to watch this video were the product of the genius of Dr. William Shockley, who invented the transistor, and the genius of Robert Noyce, who invented the silicon chip. I was honored to have known Nobel Prize winner Dr. William Shockley, and lucky that he called me his friend. He warned the world years ago about the crisis we now face. As a very young man, 40 years ago, I was scorned when I warned America that we would become a minority in our own country. I now tell you that we will become not just a minority, but a vanishing minority by the end of this century unless we stand up now with courage and sacrifice. As recently as the 1960s, whites were still 90% of America's population. Since that time, whites have lost many of their basic human rights. Tens of millions of whites have been forced out of public education because forced integration has made a wasteland of schools in many major cities. When I attended public schools in New Orleans, the most serious offenses were chewing gum or being out of class without a pass. And now it's drugs, weapons, beatings, even rape. Many cannot afford to move to different areas or send their children to private or church school, and too many of our kids are now suffering a living hell in an environment more like a nasty, violent, drug-filled gangster rap reality show rather than a decent public school.
Hey, Beav, what happened?
Some call it racism to even point out the hard fact is that black juveniles are 10 times more likely to be criminal, to beat, to rob, to kill, to deal drugs. Are facts racist too? Are white parents racist because they don't want their children to go to school where their children are 10 times more likely to be robbed or abused, intimidated, beaten, or even killed or raped? A school where obscenity, drugs, and violence and gangster rap are the dominant culture, where sexual intimidation, obscene and crude language, and even sexual assault is pervasive. Schools that academically resemble more the third world than America. I know some of you don't worry about the white children in those environments. It's considered noble to concern yourself with the well-being of minorities, even at the farthest ends of the earth. But if you're white, and you concern yourself with the well-being of your own people, even your own children, you are deemed a racist. But the real racism today is not by white people, it's against white people. Today, whites face massive racial discrimination in jobs, promotions, college admissions, and scholarships. Even though whites are still 70% of the population, the universities of America's new elite, like Harvard, are only about 20% composed of non-Jewish whites. The government's biggest employer, the post office, has so much anti-white racist discrimination going on that blacks are at least 3 times overrepresented in employment. For instance, in Chicago, where blacks are only 18% of the workforce, they are 80% of the secure, well-paid post office jobs. Many old neighborhoods of safety and beauty and well-kept lawns and gardens have been transformed. What's wonderful and vibrant cities like Detroit now look like, well, they've been in a war that we lost. The same that's true in Detroit is happening in London and Paris. Funny, those who object are called the racists, the haters. But look at the reality of it all. If you want to see real hate and real brutality, go to the demographic areas reflecting the new America, the new Europe. Drugs, brutality, rape, massive abuse of women, murder. The real racists are those who hate the European people so much that they're engineering our genocide. America and Europe are just a tiny percentage of the planet. Why are we not accorded the right to preserve our heritage, our culture, our faiths, our values, even the unique expressions of our beauty? We rightfully support every people's human rights around the globe. But should people of European descent not be entitled to human rights as well? There are 1.3 billion in China, and they're all Chinese, and they have almost no non-Chinese immigration. India has 1 billion people, overwhelmingly Indian. Africa is teeming with Africans, and they have almost no immigration. There are dozens of mostly Amerindian or African nations in Central and South America and the Caribbean, and their numbers are exploding. But we of European descent, we're not even allowed to continue our existence as only 1/10 of the Earth's people. Genocide is the destruction or wiping away of any race or any people from the earth. And we are being wiped away. I support the preservation of all life on earth. You know, we must preserve the blue whales and the great African elephant. But is the true beauty of the European child or mother or adult any less important to preserve than an elephant or a whale? I believe we have the right to live. Well, I believe that we shall live and that we shall be free, and we shall not lose our precious rights and heritage. We are still the vast majority of our countries. We're like an elephant terrified by a mouse. We just have to raise our foot and put it down, and we will survive. And we'll create a new America and a new Europe based on excellence and beauty and creativity and heritage. The real love that can come from hearts in a true family, a true brotherhood. I'm dedicated to that survival of our people, to a renaissance for our people. Millions are waking up now across Europe, across America, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and among our beleaguered white brothers and sisters who face a violent genocide going on right now in South Africa. Those of you who have the financial and political means to stand up for us, when will you step up to the plate? We need you. But we're rising. You can hear our footsteps. We're beginning to march in tune with our history, courage, and duty and love of our heritage. The best traits of our folk are coming alive in the great challenge of today. Our people are now answering the call of their heritage. They're throwing off the media lies and hate and propaganda and standing up brave and bold for the truth. Listen, you can hear the sound of awakening, not just in my voice, but in the beating of your own heart. It is the aesthetics, the art, the music, the words and hopes and dreams of our people. It is in the wide-eyed look of our children's beautiful faces. They look to us. We have a right to live, and we shall live. Join us. Give your heart and abilities to your people. We stand at the great crossroads for you and me and all those whom you love. It is truly to be or not to be. We shall survive.